Hey, Dr. Drew and my wife Susan here. We want to show you something. You've probably seen this guy all over your feed claiming that cutting carbs isn't necessary for weight loss.
One of the biggest fitness myths is when people say carbs make you fat. Carbs don't make you fat. I'm a big donut.
Versus DeSantis 2024. There have been a lot of polls coming out showing Vivek Ramaswamy has been jumping into second place. It's back and forth. Ron DeSantis has a pack behind him. He has lots of funds, but there's talk about donors maybe not sticking with him so much, but we'll see. So today, we're going to be having a discussion with Laura Loomer, Bill Mitchell, and Kyle Becker over their views of Trump versus DeSantis. And we have Laura Loomer hanging out right now, and I believe we have Bill and Kyle are coming in. Bill Mitchell.
Hey.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
This will be, you can sit right here.
Right here, okay.
Kyle, welcome back.
Hey, thank you, Tim.
Yeah,
Appreciate
absolutely.
you.
And then you can just sit here over at the ammo box. And we'll do a quick round of intros, and then we'll start discussing 2024 politics.
Good to see you. Shake your hand. Reach across.
We can wave.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you. I brought you guys gifts.
Oh, thank you.
You look like you'd be a large, right? Large.
Yeah.
Brought you your very own Donald Trump did nothing wrong shirt.
All right. I'll take
There you go.
it.
And I know that you are.
Well, I will
you
take
are
the shirt.
such a Trump
I
fan,
disagree.
so-
I disagree with the premise of
I
the
had
shirt.
to bring
but
you one. So
I disagree with the premise of the shirt, but I can always use the shirt for something.
I know you think I'm awful, so don't say I never did anything nice for
Okay,
you.
thank you.
There
To
go.
you. You almost said to you.
For you.
Actually, do I have time to get you real quick?
Yeah. There's, yeah.
There you go.
Thank you.
We'll do quick intros, but actually, is anyone...
Just be 2 seconds. How about that?
Yeah, we can post it out. We're going live.
Sure.
So if you go down this hall,
Let's see.
you'll see it on the right, or just ask somebody. It's on the right side in that hallway. But we'll do intros to start anyway.
Yeah,
so I don't
we'll
know, Laura.
retweet it now that we're going live.
Well, we're live, so
Yeah, well, now that we are live, so tell
whoever
everybody.
finishes texting first, if you guys want to, yeah, take it away.
Well, okay, just tweeted that out. So thanks so much for having me and inviting me to your studio. My name is Laura Loomer, and of course, we've known each other for several years, but I'm an investigative journalist, I'm an activist, and a lot of people know me because, well, for several years, I was the most banned woman in the world, the most censored, one of the first people in this country, along with Alex Jones and others, to be completely deplatformed. Pretty much everywhere, right? I only recently just got my Twitter account back in December, but I'm still banned everywhere else, right?
You were debanked too, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So I got debanked, and then, as you reported, you were one of the only people to really report on my congressional campaign and the censorship. It made history because I ran for Congress in 2020 and 2022 in Florida as an America First Republican, and during both election seasons, I was the first and only deplatformed, like completely deplatformed candidate in United States history. And the big tech social media companies actually created policies specifically targeting me and my campaign. So they had said originally at Twitter, they're going to allow every single candidate for Congress or governor to have an account. And I was the only one. They said, except Laura Loomer, Cassandra Fairbanks actually contacted the Twitter spokesperson and said, so are you going to reinstate Laura Loomer? And they said, everyone but Laura Loomer. And then, of course, everyone knows I won my primary in Florida in President Trump's home district in Palm Beach. That was District 21 at the time. And it's an honor because President Trump voted for me in the primary and the general. And even as the declared Republican candidate on the ballot for the general election in 2020, they still wouldn't allow me to have any social media. So, and then of course I ran again in 2022. And well, it's hard to get elected to office when you're completely silenced and we live in a digital public square. And now, of course, I'm doing everything that I can to help President Trump, the greatest president we've ever had in this country, get elected.
Right on. Kyle?
So, name's Kyle Becker. I'm CEO of Becker News. I'll be doing a Relentless podcast later on this month. I'll be launching that with a producer down in Texas. Yeah, and so I'm excited to be here. I was recently a DeSantis supporter. I think a lot of people recognize that, but I feel like I've always been very fair to Donald Trump. I believe that he has a lot of great qualities, and he had an excellent presidency. I think for the most part, in terms of my personal political preferences. So I look forward to being a part of this debate because I think I have very good advocates here whose arguments I respect and their passion. I appreciate. So. I appreciate the invite here. So
For sure.
Look forward to this.
And Bill, who are you?
Hi, yes, I'm Bill Mitchell, and I'm the host of Your Voice America. I've been around for a while. I was very involved in the Trump
You want to
2016.
slide this way just a little bit? Yeah, sorry.
Is that a little better?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And then just grab that mic. Sorry about
I
that.
was very involved in the Trump 20. Where's camera mic going? This one?
Yeah.
Okay. I was very involved in the Trump 2016 campaign. MIT ranked me as the 26th most influential person, and that because of the Twitter feed. And on election night, my Twitter feed did about 90 million hits. And so my original choice was Trump with DeSantis as a VP, but Trump wasn't feeling that. And so I decided to shift over to DeSantis. So now I'm a big DeSantis advocate. And I understand that a lot of folks on the Trump side see me as Benedict Arnold now because I was such a huge Trump guy. And now I'm a big DeSantis person. But, I'm here to have just a debate of the ideas and to strategize because, at the end of the day, we need to win this thing.
Right on.
So it's not that Trump wasn't feeling it. It's unconstitutional, right? So you do know that you can't have a presidential candidate and a vice presidential candidate from the same state on the same ballot. So a lot of people push this idea that, oh, wow, it's going to be a Trump DeSantis ticket, and DeSantis is going to be the VP. But people don't seem to understand that, you can't have a presidential candidate and a vice presidential ticket from the same state. And now that we know that President Trump changed his residency from New York to Florida, he's a Floridian. And there are currently 3 Floridians running for president in the state of Florida, right? You have President Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, and Francis Suarez, the mayor of Miami.
So that's just a quick clarification. Article 2 of the Constitution states the electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for 2 persons of whom one at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state with themselves. I heard a lot about this. I didn't know if that was true or not.
It is true. Yeah. And Roger Stone, of course, who's, a really great friend of mine and also President Trump's, longest friend and former advisor, or current advisor, I believe as well. He has written extensively about this. And so, it's important for people to understand this because there was really this demonization of President Trump, right? Something like, oh, well, he just doesn't want to have DeSantis as a VP because, it would show him up and it's all about President Trump's ego when really it's actually in our Constitution. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, well, there's no constitutional rule against 2 people being from the same state, although there may be a situation where you have a problem with the electors. However, people forget that George Bush and Cheney were both from Texas. And Cheney went ahead and changed his residency to Wyoming so they could run together. So Trump could have gone to New York. He could have gone to Las Vegas as far as residency, and they could have run together. So it's not a impossible leap. Why
would President Trump want to go to a hostile blue state where you have district attorneys and prosecutors trying to come after him? I'm just correcting the record because you said that it was because of President Trump, right? And we want to be factual here.
Well, as a matter of fact, we're talking about a subjective issue here, and factually, he could have gone there. He decided not to, and my belief is that Trump does not want to share the stage with another alpha male. And let me explain.
But Ron DeSantis is the one that's on the record actually saying that he's not really a number 2 kind of guy. He said, "Oh, I'm more of an executive guy." You could look it up. Direct quote.
Let me explain to you.
So it's Ron DeSantis, not Trump.
Let me explain to you why. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Let me explain to you why I wanted this relationship because Trump is more of a CEO type. I was a headhunter for many years. So Trump is more of a CEO type personality. He's more the guy that stands there as a showman, is the front man, is the guy that stands on the hill, says, points that away. Okay. DeSantis is more like we have in corporate world of a president who runs the day-to-day operations. And my goal was to have Trump is a fun man, give him another bite at the apple, because I felt like he was ripped off in 2020. And then have DeSantis running the operations behind the scenes, because DeSantis is a extremely brilliant, Harvard-educated legislator. Okay, he understands legislation to the granular level. Trump is famous for not wanting to read, not wanting to dive into documents, wanting bullet points on things. So I don't think that Trump was very good at running the day-to-day operations of the White House. That's where he failed. So I like.
Whoa, 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 whoa. You would never do that to your gun, would you? Of course not. Doing that to your
years.
If Ron DeSantis is such a scholar, though, right? You're saying that, oh, he's so Ivy League and he's such an expert on the Constitution. Why does so much of the legislation that he has signed into law get struck down on grounds that it's unconstitutional? You would think that a guy that claims that he's such a hotshot Harvard-trained lawyer, right, and a Yale athlete would be able to pass bills that are constitutional.
You obviously have several things in mind. Like, give me an example.
Well, the big tech social media bill, right? So Ron DeSantis loves talking about how, it's the free state of Florida, and we have free and fair elections in the free state of Florida, and we don't have censorship. And he famously went on Tucker Carlson's show and said that he had made it illegal in the state of Florida for candidates running for office to be banned on social media, and said that if candidates were banned and deplatformed, that they were going to, the state of Florida was going to institute fines against the big tech companies. Well, I would know, given the fact that I was the only candidate in the state of Florida that was completely deplatformed. But I guess, because I'm pro-Trump, and, we know that Ron DeSantis has been planning his presidential campaign for the last 2.5 years in the state of Florida, he had no intention of actually implementing this. And then, of course, a judge found that because they made the bill revolve around Section 230, which if he really is such a constitutional genius, as you're saying, he should know that the states don't have the authority to modify Section 230 because that's a federal law, right? It's a federal issue. I just think that's important because, there's really just been this facade that's been created for Ron DeSantis. I would say that he's really a Manchurian candidate. The media and the GOP establishment has been grooming him. Okay, Fox News, Rupert Murdoch.
Like Karen DiGiorno, your Bush campaign manager?
I want to go back because I think there was something important that you brought up. You were saying you wanted it to be Trump, DeSantis.
That's what I wanted originally.
And I agree.
Yeah. I thought that would have checked all the boxes.
And for the same reasons, that Trump is the guy. He's the chief, but he needs a right-hand man who's going to execute properly. However, it sounds like Ron DeSantis is the one at fault for that not happening. He's the one who said, I'm not a number two kind of guy. I'm going to run for president.
He said, I'm not a number two kind of guy long after Trump had rejected him, was calling him meatball and de sanctimonious and all these other sophomore.
That's because he was running for president.
But he said this after that had taken place. He did not say this.
No, that's dishonest. He's been planning a presidential campaign for the last 2.5 years, okay? It's been widely reported in the state of Florida and really nationally now that Ron DeSantis has been laying the groundwork for a presidential campaign since November of 2020. And, I ran for Congress in Palm Beach County, and a lot of the donors who are on Ron DeSantis's finance committee for his campaign, right? These are people who told me point blank in 2020 and 2021 during private meetings that they had been asked to be on his 2024 presidential finance committee. So this has been in the works for a long time. Obviously, Ron DeSantis knew that, he didn't just wake up in May when he filed and say, I'm going to run for president. Right. He pressured the Florida legislature, okay, in violation of Florida's Resign to Run law and really in violation of just ethical standards, period, to change the Florida Resign to Run law. He hand-appointed the Florida Secretary of State, Cord Bird, in May of 2022. And then he had Cord Bird quietly change the rules in the Florida Political Handbook so that you could transfer funds from a Florida State Political Committee, which is, before this change was made, you couldn't transfer funds, right, from state to federal entities. He had him quietly change the handbook so that he could transfer the money that he raised when he was governor over to the federal Never Back Down super PAC, right? So it just shows he doesn't really have moral character. He's willing to bend the rules.
Wait, a representative of Donald Trump is saying somebody else doesn't have moral character?
You're trying to say that this is about President Trump's ego when, if we're really being honest here, Ron DeSantis had been planning to run for president even, up until the time, like days before the 2020 presidential election, which we all know was stolen.
I could say I have no problem if someone said both of them are lacking in moral character. An argument against Trump and an argument to DeSantis are two separate things. If DeSantis was changing the rules and preparing to run as president for a long time, I mean, that's that argument for, you have to make your argument as to why he should or should not have done that. We can insult Trump, but that doesn't change anything Ron DeSantis did.
Right.
Okay, listen, I have no problem with Ron DeSantis wanting to be president of the United States. Here's the odd problem that I have. And this is what turned the table for me. What made me finally say, okay, I'm done with Trump. And so many people that follow me on Twitter that were former Trump supporters have finally said, I'm done with Trump. When President Trump came out and he said 3 days before DeSantis' election, he started calling him Ron DeSanctimonious. And then he said that Ron DeSantis is a globalist and a rhino, for which there was no evidence whatsoever. This was the lie that I could not.
He didn't call him a globalist and a rhino before the election.
I let you talk.
But you're lying, Bill. You're lying. He called him.
Wait a minute. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and let her talk over me. You're
I'll
not
let
going
you
to talk
talk,
over me.
but we can't allow him to
You're not
lie
gonna
to
talk
millions
over
of
me.
people.
You're not going to talk. You're not going to talk over me.
Just respond after he finishes.
Just
But he's
wait and let
lying.
me
I'm
finish
pointing it
talking.
out.
Okay, this is why I don't let you in my spaces on Twitter, because you talk over.
No, you
everybody.
don't let me in your spaces because you know that you'd be loomered and totally destroyed. Like you can't. I'm able to cite these encyclopedia facts that are ingrained in my mind about Florida law, and all you have is, oh, Orange Man bad, Trump is so bad, oh, he's so mean. Like, do you actually have any facts or policy, or do you know about any of the laws that Ron DeSantis changed?
Let me
or are you just a mouthpiece?
Let him finish, and then
She literally is incapable of controlling herself.
No, I can control myself, but you're not going to lie about
This
President
is why
Trump.
Marjorie Taylor Greene calls you crazy.
Okay.
This is why
Oh,
Marjorie
yeah,
Taylor Greene says you should not work for Trump because she considers you crazy. I know it's a hot
And you
button
think
issue
you
for
think I care about what a congresswoman who cheated on her husband and
There we
who
go.
is basically a mouthpiece for Kevin
Anyway,
McCarthy?
let me
You think I
let
care about what she
Let me get
thinks?
to my point. I want to make my point, please.
Yeah,
Okay.
let have him make his point, and then you can respond,
Okay.
Laura.
So Trump said that Ron DeSantis is a rhino. Trump said that Ron DeSantis is a globalist. There is no evidence of that. In Ron DeSantis' time as governor, there's no evidence of anything like that. Now, that's a broad statement that you have to have a real pattern of behavior to prove that. To me, that was it. I was done with Trump. I couldn't do this. All the unforced errors, inviting Kanye, inviting your good friend Nick Fuentes, the white nationalist, to dinner, all the stuff associating with.
It's another lie.
Which
It's another
one?
lie.
Sure.
He said that President Trump invited Nick Fuentes. In reality, the dinner
didn't.
with President Trump. No, what happened is President
Nick Fuentes
Trump.
isn't your good friend?
That's not what I
Do
said.
you disavow? Well, tell me, do you disavow Nick
let me
Fuentes?
explain what happened.
I don't-
So
yeah,
there's been
I
a
don't
lot
think
of
that's true.
misinformation about the dinner. So what happened is the dinner was actually supposed to, it took place on November 25th, I believe, okay? It was supposed to happen 2 months prior, but then something happened and they had to reschedule. And so originally it was supposed to be a one-on-one dinner with Ye and President Trump. And then Ye didn't tell President Trump or his staff that he was going to be bringing Nick and another individual with him, and he showed up to Mar-a-Lago, and then President Trump had said, well, I guess if your friends are here, come in. And nobody knew, nobody had any advance information. His staff didn't know that Ye was going to be bringing other people. But President Trump, because he's a very hospitable person, as I saw firsthand this weekend when he invited me to, spend time with him at Bedminster, he just said, okay, have your friends come sit down with us. And one of the people there was Karen Giorno, who was one of his former state directors in 2016. And for
Big
full
Bushy, by the
disclosure,
way.
she
Huge
had
Bush
been
supporter.
she had been one of my strategists for my campaign, which I have severely grown to regret. We don't work together anymore. We don't talk, and so he had thought, okay, well, just come down, sit and have dinner. And then ultimately, Karen was working with Milo and they leaked the details to the media. And Milo admitted to the press that he did it because he wanted to make Trump's life miserable and to get revenge on him. And one of the reasons why I don't work with Karen anymore, right, is because I'm very pro-Trump and she seems to have all of this animosity towards him for some reason. And I believe that they teamed up to get revenge on Donald Trump. Nick was not invited by President Trump. And so when you say, oh, Trump invited Nick, no, Trump invited Ye, and Ye ended up bringing Nick along because Nick had flown to LA 2 days earlier. So it's It's important that we get the facts right.
And Trump
because
said
there's
he
so
had no
many
idea who
lies.
Nick. How could Trump not know?
He
who
said
Nick
he didn't
Fuentes
know who
was?
he was.
but
He said he doesn't know because there was no advanced. There was no advanced introduction or preparation.
So you're right now. You're
by his
going to go
staff.
on record disavowing Nick Fuentes, who said that he thinks that Hitler is effing cool.
Why do I have to disavow somebody? I'm
Okay,
a
I
free
knew you
speech
wouldn't.
absolutist.
I knew you wouldn't.
I'm a Jewish woman, and I have enough integrity to fight for everybody's free speech rights, even people who make sometimes derogatory comments about Jews and Israel. I'm a free speech absolutist. I'm also very pro-Israel. I'm a self-identified Zionist, and the First Amendment applies to everybody. And we've already had rulings in
You
this
hang
country.
out with this guy. How
We've
about
already had rulings
Ali
in this-
Alexander,
we already
who was on the record?
What does that have anything to do
but
with
is this an argument
What
with
does
Trump,
this
or are
have
you guys mad at
anything
each
to
other?
do?
What?
What
Are
does
we
this
going
have-
to talk about Trump or
Well,
DeSantis?
are we going to talk about Trump or
I'm going
DeSantis?
to
Exactly.
I'm going to her credibility.
No, but
Okay,
because
but let's
this
go
is what
back to
Bill's
what I
going
was
to do. I just want everybody to know. He's going to attack me because DeSantis doesn't have any policies. He knows that
DeSantis doesn't have any policies.
He doesn't have any policies. He's ripped
Kyle.
This is
ripped
about
himself.
DeSantis versus Trump. Let's get back on track here.
Exactly. And
Kyle's
so
getting mad.
I want to talk. I'm here to talk about President Trump and his policies and why he's the better candidate. Okay. If you want to attack me, we can have our own space sometime, but we're not going to waste time so that you can, try to paint
Okay,
me
let's
as
talk
some
about
kind of radical.
let's go back
talk
to
about policies.
policies.
Okay. Trump has said that he is going to on day one in the Ukraine conflict with a phone call. Impossible. It's not going to happen. I guarantee you that Putin and Zelensky are laughing in his face when he says that. He says on day one, I'm going to end birthright citizenship with an executive order. Again, impossible. Would never survive the courts. He said that I'm going to drain the swamp in 6 months. Again, he was the chief recruiter for the swamp for 4 years. It will not happen. He had a chance to lock Hillary up. He promised that on his campaign I was so many rallies, lock her up. He said, yeah. And 2 weeks after he became the president-elect, he goes in front of a crowd and he says, listen, I didn't mean that. We're really not going to do that. And then the whole Russiagate thing happened. And I'm like, that never would have happened if you had locked her up. You emboldened the left by not locking Hillary up. They realized you're a paper tiger, you're all talk, you're not going to get these things done. And so they came after your jugular, and look at all these problems. And we're still seeing the long-term effects of that.
Let's start with that point right there. One of the big issues for me is which candidate is going to fire everybody. And I mean that figuratively to a certain degree. I do want everybody fired. I want reviews. I want the bureaucratic state to be curtailed to a great degree. I don't literally think someone's going to come in, bang a gavel, and everyone's gone. But the question then is, who would actually do that? Is it going to be Trump or is it going to be DeSantis?
The question is, the way you do that is, here's the biggest problem. The reason why they call the deep state is the deep state. It's these people that carry on from one administration to the next that are employees. And it's very hard to get rid of them because if you try to fire somebody, then they appeal, and that takes many years, and they appeal again. So they can outlast any president, right? So what Trump had proposed earlier was this Schedule F idea, right? And he threw an executive order where he would be able to, if anybody of these government employees could be proven to be involved in anything politically, then they could be fired. The problem is that the courts will fight this. This will be challenged over and over again. It's going to end up in the Supreme Court, probably take years and years. Trump only has 4 years in there to do that. So I think that Governor DeSantis would also follow something along those lines. But Trump wants to build a big, better facility. I believe it's for the FBI in D.C. DeSantis wants to move them out, literally drain the swamp by draining the swamp, moving people out of D.C., getting them out of the 3 martini lunches, getting them out of that, whole thing. So I think DeSantis has got a more pragmatic approach to that. He says, listen, it's going to take me 8 years to do this. You can't just drain the swamp in 6 months. And, it's not like Trump doesn't have a track record on this. Trump has got a track record on that.
Okay. So he says that DeSantis wants to, take these swamp monsters and deep state agencies out of D.C. DeSantis has brought the swamp to Florida. Do you know that Ron DeSantis allowed for the Capitol Police to actually set up an official office in Tampa, Florida for the purpose of hunting down Trump supporters who attended the rally on J6? Florida has the highest number of J6 defendants. You can look it up. There was a report, I believe, in the Tampa Bay Times about this. And so how exactly is Ron DeSantis going to dismantle these agencies when he's bringing them to Florida to harass and intimidate and carry out their weaponized agenda against Trump supporters? And they have a coalition where the Capitol Police in Tampa, Florida are working in conjunction with the FBI and the local sheriffs in Florida, some of whom were even endorsed by Ron DeSantis, and they are hunting down Trump supporters to this day. I live in Central Florida, and one of the districts that's close by to me, it was previously in my district before DeSantis took it out, right? Because it was one of the more pro-Trump areas, and he didn't want me having a super pro-Trump area when I was running for Congress against total rhino Dan Webster. Citrus County, just a couple months ago, there was a January 6er who didn't even go inside the Capitol. Okay. He was just there. He was wearing a panda suit, walking around trying to talk about peace. And he had his home raided by the FBI in conjunction with the Citrus County Sheriff's Office. And they beat him. And that happened under Ron DeSantis's watch. There are videos, and we can play them here today. I've done an extensive report about this, of January 6 defendants. As I said, Florida has the highest number at any state in the country, begging Ron DeSantis for assistance, asking him to intervene about this weaponized government. But he has emboldened the Capitol Police and the January 6 Commission to come into Florida under his watch with his approval in Tampa to hunt down Trump supporters. So I take issue with what you said.
We had the Tampa Bay Times. I remember the story. It's a big deal. The Tampa Bay Times says U.S. Capitol Police plan to open a Tampa office. Why? It's the first step towards geographic expansion of the notoriously opaque agency, which has been in turmoil since January 6th. Tampa Bay Times is not a conservative publication by any stretch of the imagination. That is a really good point, because I've talked about one of the strongest things DeSantis could do, and he did this to a certain degree, is say, I will not assist in the extradition of Donald Trump on these indictments. But this right here, actually, I think is a bit alarming, considering, the photos that have come out of some of these people.
Let's talk about January 6th. Okay, my problem with Trump is the constant drama, the constant unforced errors. Mar-a-Lago, unforced error. If he had just given the documents back when they asked for them, none of this would happen. January 6th, he knew 5 days before January 6th that Pence was not going to stop this certification. He knew that. He had requested National Guard troops. Why would he request National Guard troops unless he was afraid that there was going to be violence? He did not get the National Guard troops, and yet he sent his supporters to the Capitol and he said, fight like hell. He had said earlier in his speech,
peacefully
protest.
Bill,
but he said that picking a bit here.
He said earlier in the thing, peacefully protest, but then when they were going, he goes, fight like hell. If you don't fight like hell, you're going to lose your country. And I had said, leading up to this, I was advising people, don't go to this thing because they're going to have BLM there, they're going to have Antifa there, they're going to astroturf this thing. Trump, like he does so many times, he leads us right into the minefield. And I was using the example of Patton before. Patton was kind of an obnoxious SOB. Trump can be an obnoxious SOB, so that's not disqualifying. But if Patton had constantly led his troops into ambushes where they got wiped out, he would not be a famous general. Trump constantly leads his own people into ambushes. If Trump had not had the January 6th where there was no end game, and this is Trump's problem, he never has an end game. Where there was no end game, there was no winning scenario on this, that if he had not led the people there, we would never have had these J6 defendants. And he could have preemptively pardoned all these people.
I disagree with this. I think Donald Trump had the right to contest the election. He gave a commonplace political speech that is, widely the same kind of verbiage that Democrats use. I would say even less incendiary than most Democrats use. He had the right to be there and to press to the very end when the Electoral College slates were being submitted to Pence. And I believe 141 Republicans had the right to pressure Pence into returning the alternate slates of electors to those states that are qualified to review those slates of electors. And that is something that has been, done in 1961, is done at previous times. You can review alternate slates of electors under the Electoral College Act before they changed it. So he had the right to be there and to make his case before the American people. And the original altercation at the gates happened before those Trump supporters could have made it all the way to the Capitol after he said, go peacefully and patriotically, because Ray Epps and his buddy Samsel were there coordinating apparently to pull some shenanigans. I personally think that Trump, the important thing that you said earlier that doesn't really comport in my mind is that he did talk, according to the Department of Justice review, that he did notify the Pentagon, said that you're going to need at least 10,000 National Guard there. But if you go back and look at the testimony of Stephen Sund, you look at General Walker, the DC National Guard, they said because of optics and despite multiple warnings that happened days in advance, and I would argue the FBI knew months in advance that this was a something that's going to happen. And if you go back to that infamous Time article, the Shadow Cabal had been planning this incitement narrative since May of 2020. So they had been working to fortify this election up to that point, and they rigged it in multiple ways. And I argue that Trump should have done more to prevent the rigging with these states, to try to get Bill Barr, who talk about drain the swamp, to go to these states and say, you need to push the state attorneys generals to defend the state legislature's rights, et cetera, right? So my point is that in terms of the context of the shenanigans around the 2020 election, Trump was justified in making a speech and making his case and politically pressuring Pence to do the right thing and to use whatever, powers that he could have that would be litigated. I think that's important context in a lot of this, that the recourse that Trump was seeking was through litigation. He wanted the Supreme Court to take up like the Texas case, which was mysteriously dropped because they had original jurisdiction. The context is he was seeking legal recourse. So Georgia's election indictment is a sham. He was seeking legal recourse because his end remedy was the courts. He wanted the courts to solve these problems.
And in fact, one of the interesting things to me about the indictment in Georgia is one of the furtherance of criminal conspiracy acts they present is that Trump said whatever legal means. Like they said he went to Brian Kemp and said, hey, let's figure this out by whatever legal means. I don't know the exact quote, but it was he said, I can't remember what it was. He said, hey, see if you can look into the fraud or get it done by whatever the legal mean is. Right. And they were like, that's a conspiracy criminal act to ask someone to legally go. And going after his lawyers is just psychotic.
I want to add too, people want to blame Donald Trump for January 6th, and you said that he could have done more. Well, how come we're not talking about Nancy Pelosi calling off the National Guard? And we do know that it was Nancy Pelosi who told the National Guard to stand down. And they also
I think you guys are missing the point of what I was saying.
Exactly right.
No, but we're not missing the point because
no, you are missing the point. I can tell based on your argument, you're missing the point.
You're not putting it into
I don't think it wasn't
context.
Pelosi.
I don't think we actually know where the sound order came from.
We still don't have all the footage, okay? That's one thing. Yeah. We would know more about this if Kevin McCarthy had actually released the footage like he said. We wouldn't have so many January 6th political prisoners locked up. And I think that, people would have more sympathy for President Trump.
He could not have pardoned them.
I'm not sure if he could.
You can do a preemptive pardon.
Yes, but who? A list of names. You've got 800 people on one side of the building.
He could have done a blanket pardon of everybody.
He could have literally wrote, I pardon hereby everyone in D.C. outside of the Capitol is pardoned.
Yeah.
I don't think they were.
I don't think that would
a president can preemptively pardon.
But he's got to be able to say their names.
You're missing my point.
You can't just say like, I hereby pardon all people.
Let me clarify my point. My point was, what was in Trump's mind? Was there a possibility of violence in Trump's mind? Was that something that could have happened? Well, he requested all these thousands of National Guard troops. You don't do that unless you think there's a possibility of violence. And so he knew there was a possibility of violence. And yet he had his people go there, and he said, go to the Capitol and protest and fight like hell into a minefield based upon his own hubris and his own narcissism.
The election is the right cause to take up, to fight. But the verbiage is not that incendiary.
But also, there was no way. Let me put it this way. The January 6th rally, there were 1,000 ways it could have gone south. There was no way it could have worked.
That's exactly the point, and you're sort of indirectly proving Trump's case. He did not send a bunch of unarmed redneck extremists into the Capitol to tore the building or tore the U.S. government into submission. There was no capture and kill threat. In fact, the Congress had been originally shut down due to the pipe bomb threats at RNC and DNC. So the point is, there was no end game, and there was no collusion on the part of Trump with these extremists. He was the commander in chief. He's not culpable for that.
It's an important point. It's an important point. Trump was still speaking when the first group breached the barricades and stormed onto the Capitol grounds.
Well, the people that were the peaceful protesters there January 6th, I do not think were the people that were breaking windows and causing trouble and beating the cops.
That's true.
I think it was the BLMs, the Antifas, all these astroturf people.